in the heart of a small coastal town called Praia das Conchas, where the salt of the sea permeated the air and the waves whispered secrets at night, lived Clara, a 38-year-old woman whose life seemed like a perfect picture at first glance. Married for 15 years to Andre, a robust fisherman who spent days sailing the Atlantic, she ran a small craft shop in the central square. The smell of wood and paint mixed with the distant sound of seagulls, but beneath the surface, Clara felt an emptiness that the salty wind could not fill. Andre was a good man, with calloused hands and an easy smile, but his absences left the house too silent, the room too cold. Clara wasn't one to get lost in daydreams, but that Friday night, as the sky turned purple and the beach lighthouse twinkled in the distance, something changed. Alone on the balcony, with her light dress dancing in the breeze, she felt a strange heat rise in her chest, a desire that she couldn't name, but that made her shiver. I wanted to be touched, desired, alive. It was then that fate blew an unexpected wind. His nephew, Lucas, 22 years old, knocked on the door. Lucas, the son of Clara's older sister, had arrived after missing the last boat to the neighboring village, Ilha do Sol. Tall, with wind-blown brown hair and green eyes that reflected the sea, he carried a battered backpack and an awkward smile. "Aunt Clara, can I sleep here today?" he asked, the hoarse voice of someone who had just run there. She nodded, her heart beating a little faster, and invited him to stay on the living room couch. But, as she climbed the wooden stairs to her room, a forbidden thought enveloped her like mist rising from the sea. Lucas was so close, so real, so different from the solitude that Andre left behind. I would like to take a brief break to ask for your like and subscription to the channel. You are helping us a lot with this simple gesture, and I would like to know which city you watch us from. "Lucas, have you eaten yet?" she asked hesitantly from the stairs. "No, Aunt, but there's no need to worry," he replied, with a gentle tone that only increased the heat in her chest. Clara closed the bedroom door, but sleep didn't come. Instead, desire grew, a flame that licked his skin and defied his reason. The silence of the house in Praia das Conchas seemed to pulse with an invisible energy as Clara tried to suffocate the thoughts that invaded her. Lying in bed, the sound of the waves crashing on the shore mixed with the echo of Lucas's voice. In the room below, he was young, vibrant, the opposite of the routine that Andre, with his days at sea, imposed on her life. Clara turned over on the pillow, the cool fabric against her warm skin, and muttered to herself, "This is crazy. He's my nephew." But the flame did not go out, grew, fueled by the loneliness she carried like an anchor. The next morning, the sun bathed the rustic kitchen in golden light. Clara went down the stairs, her loose hair falling over her shoulders, wearing a light robe that revealed the curves that time had softened. Lucas was already awake, stirring a cup of coffee he had found in the cupboard. "Good morning, Auntie," he said, his green eyes shining with a mixture of sleep and curiosity. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly as she grabbed a basket of bread from the counter. "More or less. The sofa is hard, but the sound of the sea makes up for it," he replied, laughing quietly. The conversation flowed easily, but each look exchanged carried a weight that Clara didn't want to name. Lucas was telling her about his plans to open a kiosk on Ilha do Sol, his hands gesturing enthusiastically, and she found herself mesmerized by the movement, by the vitality he exuded. Andre never spoke like that. He was practical, direct, a man of the sea, not of words. When Lucas offered to fix a broken shelf at the craft store, Clara accepted, even though she knew it would keep him around another day. "You're good with your hands, huh?" she said, smiling, as she watched him hammer the wood. "I inherited it from the family, I think," he replied, giving her a mischievous look that made her heart race. The obstacle came in the afternoon. A phone call from Andre. "I'll arrive early tomorrow, Clara. The sea is calm," he said, his deep voice echoing through the phone. She froze, the weight of reality crashing over her like an icy wave. Lucas, oblivious, whistled in the room, and Clara realized that time was against her, or perhaps in favor of what she dared not admit. The twilight-colored Praia das Conchas in orange tones, and the lighthouse in the distance cast its intermittent beam over the calm sea. Clara could feel the air thick with salt and tension as she prepared a simple dinner in the kitchen. Grilled fish and a salad of herbs gathered from the backyard. Lucas, still in the house after fixing the shelf, had offered to help, and was now chopping tomatoes with a concentration that made his fingers dance over the knife. The heat from the stove mixed with the heat rising through Clara's body, and she could barely take her eyes off him. "Have you ever thought about staying here, Lucas?" she asked, trying to sound casual as she stirred the pan. "Sometimes. But Ilha do Sol is busier for my kiosk," he replied, looking up. His green eyes met hers, and for an instant, the world stopped, the sound of the waves drowned out by the pulse in her ears. Then, the event that changed everything happened. As Lucas reached for a bowl on the shelf above, his arm brushed hers, a light but electric touch that made Clara drop the spoon to the floor. They both bent down at the same time to pick it up, and their faces were inches away from each other. The smell of sea air on her skin, mixed with the day's sweat, enveloped her like a wave. "Sorry, Auntie," he murmured, but didn't back down. Clara felt her heart race, his breath hot against her cheek, and with an impulse she couldn't contain, she leaned forward and brushed her lips against his. A brief kiss, almost accidental, but full of intention. Lucas froze, eyes wide, but didn't move away. "Aunt Clara, what was that?" he asked, his voice shaky, a mix of shock and something deeper. She backed away, her face burning, the weight of what she had done bearing down on her like a storm. I don't know. Forgive me," he stammered, standing up quickly, the wooden floor creaking beneath his bare feet. But the damage was done. The flame that she had tried to put out now burned freely, and Lucas's look, confused but curious, said that he felt it too. The revelation came minutes later, when Clara's cell phone vibrated on the table. A message from Andre. "Boat broke down. I won't arrive until the day after tomorrow." Relief flooded her, but with it came fear. More time with Lucas was more time to give in to what she could no longer ignore. Night fell over Praia das Conchas like a dark veil, the lighthouse cutting through the darkness with its insistent glow. Clara locked herself in the room after the impulsive kiss, her heart a beating drum, while the sound of the waves seemed to mock her confusion. Lucas stayed in the room, the silence between them louder than any words. She threw herself onto the bed, her robe rumpled against her skin, and stared at the wooden ceiling, trying to erase the taste of it. Salty, hot, forbidden. "What did I do?" she whispered to herself, her hands gripping the sheet as if she could crush the guilt. The next morning, the sun rose shyly, and Clara went down the stairs determined to build a wall between them. Lucas was on the balcony, looking at the sea, his tight t-shirt hugging his broad shoulders. "Good morning," he said hesitantly, green eyes searching hers. "Good morning," she replied dryly, pouring coffee with shaking hands. But the air between them vibrated, charged with something neither of them could name. He broke the silence. "About yesterday. It doesn't need to be like this. It was just a moment, right?" His voice was soft, but there was a gleam in his eyes that defied lies. Clara took a deep breath, facing the first obstacle, her own weakness. "Lucas, this can't happen. Andre arrives tomorrow, and I'm your aunt." The words came out firm, but inside she was falling apart. He nodded, but the crooked smile he gave her made her shudder. "Of course, Aunt. Let's forget," he said, but his tone was teasing, as if he knew that forgetting was impossible. The day passed in a dance of tension. At the craft store, while Clara was sanding a piece of wood, Lucas appeared with an excuse. "I brought you water from the fountain." He moved too close, the glass brushing her fingers, and she felt the heat rise again. "Stop, Lucas," she whispered, but her voice was shaking, betraying her. He backed away, but left a silent promise in the air. At night, alone, Clara reflected. She could send Lucas away, or give in to the flame that consumed her. The decision was a razor's edge, and she knew any choice would change her forever. The night in Praia das Conchas was thick, the sky studded, with stars reflected in the restless sea. Clara felt the weight of each hour that passed, Andre's return approaching like a storm on the horizon. In the living room, Lucas watched the lighthouse shine through the window, the silence between them broken only by the crackling of the wood in the fireplace that she had lit to ward off the cold. But the heat that rose in his chest didn't come from the flames. It came from him, from the presence that filled the house like the scent of sea air. She tried to occupy herself, tidying the kitchen, but her eyes betrayed her, searching for him. Lucas stood up, approaching with slow steps, his wrinkled t-shirt stuck to his body after a day of work at the store. "Aunt Clara," he began, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You've been running away from me since yesterday. Why?" She froze, the sponge slipping from her hands into the sink. "Because it's wrong, Lucas," she replied, turning to face him, her brown eyes sparkling with fear and desire. He took a step closer, the space between them evaporating. "What if I don't want it to be wrong?" he asked, his green eyes shining like the sea in the moonlight. Clara's heart raced, the tension stretching her to the limit. Then, in a rush, she gave in. Her lips found his, a hungry kiss, filled with salt and guilt, her hands gripping the back of his head as he pulled her by the waist. The world dissolved. The fireplace, the sound of the waves, Andre's shadow. Everything swallowed by the flame that consumed them. But the climax came with a bang. The phone rang, cutting through the air like thunder. Clara walked away, panting, the name Andre flashing on the screen. She answered, her voice shaking. "Hi, love." On the other side, Andre said calmly, "I'll be there in an hour. The boat was repaired faster." Panic engulfed her, the cold ground beneath her bare feet a shock to the heat of Lucas's body. He stared at her, desire still burning in his eyes, but now mixed with something new, uncertainty. The conflict exploded. She wanted him, but Andre was coming back, and reality was knocking on the door. The sound of the phone still echoed in Clara's ears as she stared at Lucas, the heat of the kiss dissipating in the cold air of Praia das Conchas. "He's coming," she whispered, her voice breaking, her eyes wide with panic. Lucas stepped back, running his hands through his brown hair, his face a mix of frustration and regret. I'm leaving, Auntie," he said, picking up his backpack from the corner of the room. But Clara grabbed his arm, her touch firm, almost desperate. "No. Stay. We need to resolve this." Silence fell heavily, interrupted only by the crackling of the fireplace. Clara took a deep breath, the weight of her actions crushing her. "This can't go on, Lucas. It was a mistake. Andre is my husband, and you—" She stopped, the words choking in her throat. "I am what?" he replied, his green eyes sparkling. "Just a moment of weakness for you?" The question hit her like a wave. But before she could respond, the roar of Andre's engine echoed across the gravel road. The door opened, and Andre entered, the smell of salt and diesel permeating his jacket. "Clara, I'm here!" he called, smiling, oblivious to the tension that was hovering. He saw Lucas and frowned. "Still here, kid?" Lucas improvised. "I missed the boat again, Uncle. I was helping my aunt in the store." Andre nodded, satisfied, and went to put his things away, leaving them alone for a moment. Clara looked at Lucas, a silent plea in her eyes. "It's over." Later, after Andre slept, Clara sat on the balcony, the sea whispering in the distance. Lucas appeared, backpacks on his shoulder. "I'll take the first boat tomorrow," he said, his voice low. "But I won't forget Clara." She closed her eyes, her heart sinking. "Neither do I. But it has to be this way." He left, his silhouette disappearing into the mist, and Clara felt a new emptiness. Not one of loneliness, but of relief, mixed with longing. Andre woke up at dawn, kissed her forehead as always, and life went on. The flame went out, but left hot ashes that she would keep secret. Months passed in Praia das Conchas, and summer brought a humid heat that stuck to the skin. Clara was still in the craft store, her skilled hands molding wood and shells into pieces that tourists carried as souvenirs. The lighthouse still twinkled at night. The waves still sang. But something in his gaze had changed, a stillness that mixed peace and melancholy. Andre returned from the sea with the same constancy, his easy smile and stories of fish escaping the net. He didn't know, he would never know, the secret that Clara carried like a shell hidden in the sand. Lucas didn't come back. It was heard in the village that he had opened the kiosk on Ilha do Sol, serving drinks named after storms, and smiling at the girls who passed by. Clara sometimes caught herself looking at the horizon, imagining him there, his brown hair blowing, in the wind, his green eyes shining with that flame that almost consumed her, but she wasn't looking for him. The decision to let him go was a deep but necessary cut, like ripping out a torn net to save the boat. One sultry afternoon, while sweeping the store, Clara found a small wooden sculpture that Lucas had left behind, a carved fish. Simple but perfect. She held it, her fingers tracing the lines, and a sad smile curved her lips. "You made me feel alive," he murmured into space, putting the piece away in a drawer. Andre came in soon after, sweaty from the sea, and hugged her from behind. "You're thinking today, huh?" he said, his voice husky with affection. "Just tired," she lied, turning to kiss him. a kiss that sealed her choice. The lesson was recorded in Clara, like the marks of the waves on the beach. Desire is a wild force, but love, even imperfect, is a safe haven. She never crossed that line again. But the memory of that heat, salty, forbidden, intense, remained. A distant echo that reminded her of who she could have been. And under the starry sky of Praia das Conchas, Clara continued, stronger, more whole, carrying her ashes, in silence. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help us, and tell me where you follow us from.